All right, good morning. It is April 29th, 2012, and the Martinez Oral History Project is at the beautiful home of Jane Silva, 081 Arriba Street in Martinez. And we're going to be hearing Jane's stories about her World War II experience as a woman Marine, and how she got involved in the war and what it meant to her and how she felt about the whole effort and being a part of the war. Thank you for welcoming us to your home. It's really great. It's really wonderful. We're looking forward to hearing this experience.
All right.
So Jane, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background, where you were born and the date, and where you grew up.
Well, I was born in Ohio, one of 6 children. I was in the middle. I was a twin.
A twin, do you have a sister or a brother twin?
Sister.
Uh-huh.
But although we were 4 hours apart and I'm the oldest, she was a head taller than me.
Really?
I had dark hair, she had blonde hair. So we spend our time explaining that we were twins. No one plugged. But nobody believed us. We came to the decision, since no one, I'll talk about school friends when you're in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. We decided we were adopted. Now most women, when they have a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, go out and adopt twins. If you can believe that one. We did. But
So that's the story you told.
well, that's what, you didn't have to explain it anymore.
Right. Made your life easier.
But Janice was always a head taller. And we were different. But and then I had a sister and a brother. The son was finally born.
One boy and 5 girls.
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
And my father used to say to her, I have 5 girls and each one has a brother. We'd get very upset.
So how old were you when you began working? I know you told me that your father had a store.
The Depression hit. He had a dress factory and he went bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
So then when his mother passed away, he took the money and bought a drugstore. He was going to make it a restaurant, and he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could hardly wait to work in that store, so I was dusting shelves. So finally I worked up to work in the register. Once I learned how, then my life wasn't my own.
What do you mean?
Well, you worked, I had to go and help open up before school, and then he signed in or joined or I don't know what. We became a Walgreen franchise.
What year was that?
That would be in the 30s.
Okay.
And that meant we had to have a lunch counter.
Oh.
So you had to get ready for the lunch.
So you did all that prep before and then you went to school all day.
And then you come home at lunchtime, you had to serve lunch. You'd have to beat the high school crowd. Because he had the bargain for lunch. Hamburgers were 5 cents, soup was 5 cents, pie was 5 cents. And then after school and work.
So you went there in the morning and set up, then you went to school, then you came during the lunch rush and worked at the lunch counter, back to school, and then back to the store after school. Wow.
But my twin didn't.
You were the only child that worked there?
No, my older sister did. But Janice didn't like to work in the store, and she treated everybody's money like it was contaminated.
That's not really good customer service skills, is it?
She didn't work in the store.
Yeah, that worked for her then, huh?
Yes.
So you worked there for how long? You started when you were how old?
Well, I was dusting shelves at 13, but it must have been 15 before I was working.
I think the cash register. Did your dad pay you to work there, or was it just?
No, eventually I worked up to $3 a week.
And that was when you were how old? You were in high school at that point?
That's when I quit.
Mm-hmm.
When I turned 18, I typed out a letter of resignation, hopped the Greyhound.
You gave the letter of resignation to your dad?
No, I mailed it.
Was that before you left town or after?
I mailed it the day I left. Well, because they would have offered me more money, and I would have had an argument, and none of that stuff.
So what was one of the particular experiences you had that made you realize you wanted to leave this small town and get out there? What were the motivation behind that?
Probably. Well, I knew I wanted to see the world. Because in high school and the civics class, we visited a trial. And this poor farmer was he was a witness, I think, I don't know what he was. This attorney attacked him and said, have you been out of town? I mean, how far, where does he lived in Palestine, Ohio, which is a service station probably. And you've been far? I see you came to Greenville, which would have been about 5 miles. And he said, yeah, I've been to Richmond, which would have been about 10 miles. And he put him down every time he opened his mouth. He made fun of him. And I thought, if I'm ever going to be a witness, I got to get out of this town because they won't
take you seriously.
And I'm still waiting to be a witness. And I don't think they'd ask me if I ever been out of town. You know, he could have been the best bred man. If you have a farm, you have cows, you can't leave town.
Right.
So, but they just humiliated that man. Put him down. Oh, you've been all the way to Richmond, 10 miles or whatever miles, I don't know. I thought, I'm never going to get in that spot.
Yeah, that made quite an impression on you.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Yeah.
So I had to, on my world quest, haven't been around the world, but I did leave for Greenville.
You left Greenville and you got on the bus and went to Dayton?
Yeah, but I had planned it. I had answered ads and I got a room, and I had one of my girlfriends was going to be my roommate who never showed up. And I was stuck with a double payment.
Oh. Did you have family in Dayton when you went there?
No, I had the ad.
You had the ad. And that was it.
The Dayton Daily News.
Did you have the job before you left?
No.
Or, so you just...
But you could get a job. The war was on.
Uh-huh.
It was no worry.
So what
Jane, can I stop really quick? I just gotta adjust the microphone. So
Sure, that's
put
good.
it in a bad spot.
That's good.
Just move it on the other side. It's kind of like rub it against your shirt. That should be a lot better. All right, sorry about
No, many of the kids were moving. All the kids were going to Dayton.
So everybody from the small towns were going
That's
to...
a farm town.
We're going to the bigger cities to... Was it mainly because they wanted to get out, or did they want to help
Well,
with
they
the war
were
effort?
recruiting kids from high school to come and work in the defense.
Okay, to help with
I
the
wasn't
war effort.
recruited, though.
You self-recruited.
Self-recruited. But my sister was recruited, Mary Alice.
Uh-huh.
She was recruited.
And she went to Dayton?
Well, my father wouldn't let her go.
Oh.
So she got a job at the dime store on the off time that she wasn't working at the drugstore, and people would come in and say, "Don't you pay your daughter enough?"
Because she was across the street working at the
She
dime
was down the street working at the dime store. And they said, "Well, when do you want to go to Dayton?" And then she worked for some steel company.
Uh-huh. But you didn't live with your sisters who were in Dayton?
Not right away.
Uh-huh.
Housing was terrible.
Was it hard to find a place?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And then finally, my twin had gone to art school, and finally we got an apartment together.
Mm-hmm. And when she came to Dayton finally to
No,
be...
she was already there.
Oh, okay. Your twin was. That's right, because she didn't work in the drugstore, so she got out early.
Welcomed out.
Yeah. What did the... I know that there was a lot of advertising for the war effort. And
everywhere you went.
sacrifices. Can you talk a little bit about that, what you saw and what
There
the
were
message
signs
was?
all the time, but even in the drugstore we had, you know, the Army wants you, the Navy wants you,
Mm-hmm.
and everything was where did Joe go and where did Jack go, and everybody was being drafted or somewhere, and you got a letter, and it was everything.
Oh, go ahead.
And then we had to save everything, which we should do today. I mean, you divided your garbage up, and you had food stamps, and everything was rationed, and everything was different in the Marine Corps. We had butter, we had, which you didn't have.
Were the was the effort was throughout the whole community, all age groups, everybody helping to save and not wasting anything? And
Well, there were always people bragging that they could get something without the stamp, or they could cheat and get more gas stamps. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a car then. I didn't know how to drive.
Right.
But I mean, I felt they were the enemy.
Because they weren't in the same effort. They weren't putting forward.
No, they were bragging about ditching the system. And then some things were true and some things weren't true.
Right.
Then they had a big turn in all your pots and pans and build a plane.
Oh.
And my father said that's not true. And they had a big fenced area by the city hall, and everybody brought their pots and pans. And I found out later that you cannot give a gift to the government. So when they took all those pots and pans, one person collected them and sold them to the government.
Oh.
Became quite wealthy. And I didn't believe that. But then I found out it was true.
It was true, huh?
In different areas, somebody would say, I'll take them, and sold them to the government.
So everyone thought they were donating them, but the one person who organized it was the one that got paid by the government.
I don't know who organized
Right,
it.
but whoever it
somebody
was.
managed to be in, get the money. And it happened out here, and it happened in Ohio.
Oh,
But and this one gal said, that was my uncle. He became quite wealthy.
yeah. Wow.
Isn't that terrible?
Yeah, that is terrible. That
They
is.
thought they gave up their pans to build an airplane.
So what kind of work did you get when you were in Dayton? Where did you work and what was your
When
responsibility?
I moved to Dayton, I worked at a department store.
Okay.
And when you got sick, you got a dozen roses
From whom?
from the store instead of pay. And you know, my landlady wouldn't take it.
Yeah, it did do you a lot of good, huh?
So I went out to the Air Service Command and got hired. And
What did you do there? What was your
shipping tickets,
So you were typing up.
typing shipping. They don't do them today.
What was what was involved in a shipping ticket?
Well, I worked for Logistics and Publications, and they sent out the manuals to put together the different airplanes.
So the airplanes were sent.
Some were sent in parts and some were sent whole, but it also, they had to have the manual in case it broke down, how to fix it. And you had to send these manuals to where the planes went.
So did each manual get typed individually?
The manuals were in another department, you just did the shipping.
Okay,
ticket.
the tickets.
Yeah, I never saw them. I did see B-17, you know, they had all those numbers and airplanes and everything. But
Were your coworkers primarily women, or?
there were a bunch of airheads like I was, 18 years old.
Just waiting to move on to their next opportunity, huh?
Well, a lot of, I don't know what they were going to do, but
What was your plan? You definitely had a plan.
no. I was looking for the next opportunity,
Right.
but they had a law that you couldn't quit your job and change. If you did, you had to wait 3 months to get another job.
That was if you were employed in the military?
If you were employed, anything that was designated for the war effort, for a steel company or anything that was labeled for the war effort, you could not change jobs.
So once you got a job, you stuck with it because obviously you can't afford to live for 3 months if you're just.
That's why they put the law
Right,
in.
right.
Because there were too many being bid, they were hard to get, not typists,
Uh-huh.
but the law went for everyone. But if you were a machinist or something like that,
Mhm.
they were always bidding for you to come go work for them.
So there were a lot more people than there were positions. A lot of people wanted to work.
No, a lot more positions than there were people to work
Okay,
them.
okay.
And you could name your own price.
So, but that wasn't the case
Not
with
for
what you
typists.
did. Right. So, so how long did you work as a typist for the logistics department?
Well, I worked there. I had to wait till I was 20. And all the girls we turned 20 were going to join and be a whack and see the world, because you could see the world. I don't know what I was going to do looking, but
That was the poster you kept seeing, see the world?
well, that's what we thought.
Right.
And we could see them in other departments. We didn't have it in our department.
Uh-huh.
And now I look back and I think those poor girls who got stuck in Dayton, Ohio.
They may still be there. So tell us about how you got involved in the armed forces, you know?
Well, when I turned 20, there were 3 of us going to go down and join, but somebody had to have their nails done or something. Everybody had an excuse, so I went by myself. And I barely made it before they closed because I had to go downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked in that office to join the WACs, and she was on some sailor's lap, and where's the Marine Corps? And I joined the Marines.
Yeah. You were appalled to see the wax sitting on the sailor's lap?
Yeah, they were clowning around. It's 1943.
Yeah, right. That's not what you do.
That's right. And I ran into Billy Goat Gruff. I mean, there was an old man there. Roar. I signed up anyway.
At the Marines, there were Billy
At the
Goat.
Marines,
Yeah. Because that was that the next possible opportunity?
No, I asked him what the next was. That's the only thing I could think of. I
Uh-huh.
didn't know much about it. I just knew there were wax.
So was it fairly unusual for women to be involved in the Marines? I mean, we think now that that's just something.
I don't know.
I
never heard of. In Ohio, you don't hear about Marine. Well,
Uh-huh.
there were guys that joined the Marines, but you never saw any. You never saw any because there's no water there. There's a river, but there's no Navy. I don't think so.
So how did you find out about them though? If you knew about the wax and
Probably you go to the movies. They have Army, Navy, Marine Corps. Everything was military then because of the war.
So you learned about it through the little shorts and before the movies and things. Uh-huh.
Well, no, they had movies with the military in them.
How did the general public feel about women being involved in the Marines? Was that a
Well, after I joined, then I heard all kinds of stories. My landlady called me down and said there were boatloads coming back from Europe, all pregnant, because they just serviced the Marines. That's all. Those serviced the men. That's all they did in the service. Oh, I could never heard of anything so ridiculous. But I never had the time to go look her up and tell her it wasn't true.
Yeah. So you signed up for the Marines and you're 18 or you're 20.
20.
And then so how did that progress? What happened next? I mean, did they give you your orders or
No, when I signed up in October when I was 20, and then I didn't get called till December.
So you went back to your regular job?
I went back to my regular job, and I thought, well, they didn't need me.
Uh-huh. So then how did you find out that you'd been called up?
Well, I got it in the mail that I had to report for duty.
Where were you to go? Did they tell you?
Oh, it's in that book, I think.
Was it
We went to Cincinnati,
Uh-huh.
and then you met somebody, and then you went to someplace. But it was all secret because it was military, which is kind of stupid. but we couldn't tell, no one could tell us what train we were taking or where we went. Well, the bad part was, when we left, we went from there to Atlanta and Atlanta back up to, there was a big train wreck. Not our train, but my folks didn't know what train I was on. And a lot of people were killed. But we didn't know anything about it. And then the Red Cross was flooded. When we were I remember we were in boot camp, and the Red Cross came in, would everyone please write home? And one girl said quite loudly, if we'd have died, we would have told them.
How did your parents feel about you joining the Marines? Did you have to get their permission, or did you?
They did have to sign for you. But unknown to me, my older sister, who was busybody, I had been dating someone. Not a steady, I mean, you went out with somebody, so what? And she had met him. But evidently, I found out later, she told him I was going with an older man. He might have been 22 or 23. Anyway, I called home and said I had some important papers for them to sign. And I think they were upset that I was going to get married because I was kind of flaky. And when they saw I was a Marines, they could hardly wait to get to the notary. But that Monday they called and asked if they could have the papers back. I said they already turned in.
So they figured by signing the papers they were getting you away from the quote-unquote older man, but then they
they knew I wasn't getting married because I wasn't mature enough.
Right. But they wanted they changed
their
mind.
They didn't have time to think. They knew I was coming in to have some papers signed, and I didn't say what.
Right.
And that was a relief that that's all it was.
Right.
They didn't have time to think.
Yeah, they just signed him and then you turned him in and that was that.
That was that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I made up my mind I was going to go because my twin and I had an apartment together. And my twin is my opposite. I ended up doing her laundry and she didn't like to do that. And I thought, I'm not her mother. So
you went from
Dayton to boot camp.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that. Who was with you in that group, or were they all from Ohio, or?
They were from Dayton and a different area, Cincinnati. There were 9 of us, like I said, and then we hit up with. We had to wait for this other group to come in from Arkansas and Texas. And they put one lady in charge, if you noticed in the book. The oldest one, they put her in charge. So there because she knew how to bar hop. We sat in this bar for 3 hours waiting for time to meet them at the train station. But it was raining a little bit, so it was kind of hard in December to see the sights. And we did ask the bartender whether we could see sights, and he said he didn't know where any were. But there we sat. I think I've got the little.
You have a coaster from the bar.
Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah. So the Marine women from Texas and Arkansas arrived, and then.
And that's when you learned about the different languages.
Oh, can you explain that a little bit?
Well, people living in different parts of the United States before television, they all talk different. Those from the South talk a lot different. They really talk different.
Had you ever spoken with anybody from the South? Was that the first time you'd heard a Southern accent?
Well, I've heard in the movies.
Oh, okay. But never in person.
Pretend.
So you never really heard a Southerner talk?
Well, when I was in boot camp, we had to go to different classes. And one in particular was Marine Corps history. And this gal gave lectures, and we didn't have a book. And she was talking about why the Marines were formed. because the parrots, of course she has accent all the time, were taking over the boats, and they needed someone to protect the Navy. So they organized the Marine Corps to protect the Navy from the invading parrots.
As in birds, parrots, birds?
That's what I kept thinking of. A boat that would help. And a boat in Boston, why would a parrot come all the way from the south? I was the most, I just could not believe that these parrots, by the end of the class I finally decided, oh, pirates. But a lot of things you didn't understand.
Yeah.
Because he really had an extreme accent down there.
So she was from the South, and she was saying pirates, but it came out sounding like parrots, of course.
They do say parrot.
Yeah, that is so.
I don't know what they call a parrot. But you know, they went to all that trouble for birds.
Yeah.
And that's one thing they said, because they had to know who to protect. You know, the officers have a stuff on top of their hat.
Okay.
They call it scrambled eggs.
Uh-huh.
Because when they're swinging those swords around, they have to know who's the officer. I didn't know that. That scrambled egg on top of the hat, because on a boat you're up on the top and
Oh,
down.
you can look down and see who the officers were.
I guess you don't shoot them.
I guess not.
But when I got to boot camp, and then we're in Boston and different places, the people in Boston talked so fast you didn't know what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have to say I'm in the head, but it was a bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And this little girl says, "Where y'all from?" And I said, "I'm from Dayton, Ohio." She turned white as a sheet.
Why?
Yeah, a northerner. The Civil War was like yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Still.
Wow.
And that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe people got over the Civil War because of World War II.
Maybe, yeah. Other things that they were forced to be together, and
My grandmother would not like it that I spoke to you. From what I saw on PBS about the Civil War, I can see why they felt that way.
That's interesting.
I didn't tell her my grandfather was in the Civil War.
Yeah. Keep that to yourself, huh? So how long were you at boot camp, and what was it like? You know, what kind of things? Is that where you got your uniform? I know that you said that you were...
You had, well, see, we were 2 weeks late because of the snow. Not 2 weeks, 2 days.
2 days.
3 days. So that threw everything off because they have a new group come in every 2 weeks. So even though we were late, we had to double time it.
You had to catch up to where you would have been if you'd been on time.
Right, because they couldn't, there's another group coming in 2 weeks. So we got our shots, both arms, and everything we had to do in a hurry because we had to make up for the 2 days we were in. Now, we had to be, our orders, we could only carry a suitcase a certain way. We could only carry so much. But when we got to Wilmington, North Carolina, to transfer go to boot camp, to Camp Lejeune, there was a girl that had multiple luggage. And we were snowbound, we had to go to the USO, and she pulled out her record player, and she had symphonies. Well, there were military guys from the Army. There was an Army base not too far away, and they wanted to dance. And she would take off the dance records and put her symphony on. She had to be I heard she had all this luggage. And then when she got to boot camp, she wouldn't get up at 5 o'clock. She stayed in bed. Now, I don't know why they did ever put up with it.
They didn't reprimand her? She was able to
I don't know
continue?
because she was down a ways.
Oh, okay.
And they had us, well, 5 o'clock you had to do double time to go to, you had to march. Double time is your arms are like this and your elbows touch next shoulder and you're running.
Oh.
But in cadence. They put you through a lot in the first couple of weeks.
That was at 5 in the morning you had to do that?
Yeah, I'd go to breakfast, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You got up at 5 in the morning.
And you did double time to the mess hall to get breakfast?
Right. And then they'd have you, well, the moral of the whole thing, I understand. They do everything to tear you down.
Mm-hmm.
And then halfway, they build you up to a new person. I don't know if they ever caught on, it don't work. But you had to do everything double time, and everything had to be, when you hung up your clothes, you had to button it,
Mm-hmm.
and your shoes had to be tied.
And you had to hang things facing a certain direction, didn't
Oh,
you?
correct.
Uh-huh.
But see, like if you had PE, you had to take off your uniform, button it up, put on your gym clothes, tie your shoes, tie those shoes, and be out there within a certain amount of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember the first time we went out to PE, we were supposed to go out and do an exercise. And the leader says, "It's snowing out there." And someone said, "Go on out anyway." So we went out in the snow and jumped up and down. We did more in the high school than we did there. Because you always hear they're going to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have tough.
They weren't tough on the women?
Well, because women were women.
Right, right.
And some of the women that were officers that just got out of college, they were used to that kind of crap.
Mm-hmm.
And, but then when you had to get back in so many minutes, you had to unbutton your clothes to put them on, to put them, you know. The only good thing was your laundry bag. Because everything had to be ship-shape, but you could jam stuff in your laundry bag.
So could you stick stuff in the laundry bag that you didn't have ship shape when it was time for inspection, or did they?
Well, as long as, if you saw in the book, everything had to be laid out like it was. But your underwear and things like that, you could shove it in the laundry bag.
Yeah, they had very specific instructions for your locker, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and everything about you.
So-
You had very little.
Very little advance. So there was a time also when women used makeup and dyed their hair, and was that allowed? I mean,
Where would you put it?
well, that's what I'm asking.
You could go, well, not in boot camp, you wouldn't have had time because you did everything double time. But when you were in your barracks, I guess you could do it.
Mm-hmm. So-
We had the women's PX, and they had a beauty shop.
Oh, okay. But that's once you got to Miramar. That's not
Yeah.
when you were in boot camp. So how long were you actually in boot camp? Was it 4 weeks? Was it 2 weeks? Was it?
I think it was 6 weeks.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
And
I'd
then
have to look.
you got your orders.
No, then I had to be reclassified because I was put into the Air Corps.
Okay.
I was sent to Cherry Point.
Cherry Point,
It's about
North Carolina.
Cherry Point, North
Okay.
Carolina. It's down a ways from Camp Lejeune,
Uh-huh.
and it was Air Corps to be reclassified. And you should be there about 18 days. I was there for 10 weeks.
What did being reclassified involve?
Because I'm going from line company to Air Corps.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't understand it. But
So you were there for 10 weeks?
because there was another girl by the last name of Baird, who was assigned to Cherry Point, and she did not like it. She did not want to be at Cherry Point, North Carolina. She wanted to go to California. And so the guys she tried several things, so when they saw another Baird name come up, they put the card over.
Oh, and that was yours.
That was mine.
That was Jane Baird, not the other Baird.
And I kept telling the NCO, I'm here an awful long time because I've met a lot of people. All I had to do was do one little job and then I was free. And we could go boating, I could ride my bicycle, and maybe different girls come and go, come and go. In fact, one of the girls I met, I still am friends with. She's in Atlanta now.
Huh.
And we just had a hell of a good time.
So that was a great 10 weeks.
I could have gone home.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know. Finally, the NCO, the one that in charge, says, yeah, I guess you're right, you have been here a while. And then the guy said, oh, I'm sorry. We thought you were so-and-so. And anywhere you wanted to go. And I was offered to go to, what do they call it? The school for, I thought you'd be working in a warehouse. I thought, that doesn't sound like I want to work in a warehouse. It's called. But it was one of the better schools you could ever go to.
Mm.
Everybody comes out of there or came out with a high rank.
Mm.
But I passed it up because I didn't want to work in a warehouse. It
Mhm.
didn't sound like just like shipping tickets.
Yeah. So did they give you a list of options of
No, she
places?
was just verbally.
Okay.
I could have anything I wanted
Because
I had been railroaded.
Right, right.
So they said there's a shipment leaving in the morning for California. And I said, I'll take it.
So how did you get there? By train or?
It was a troop train.
The troop train. Wow.
And again, it was secret,
Top secret. Uh-huh.
top secret.
Was it all women on the train or was it men and women?
No, it was in our cars. There were 2 or 3 cars. Fortunately, I was in a Pullman car. Now, some of the gals were in another car.
Some water for you.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have.
Here's a coaster for you. Thanks, Ken.
They had taken a boxcar, put 3-tiered bunks in it.
Oh my gosh.
With no bathroom.
Oh wow.
In 5 to 6 days.
In that car. Wow.
I was in a Pullman.
Yeah.
But now, in boot camp, we're told no matter what, you have to do what you're told. No matter what, you can't do this, you can't do this, can't do that. When we got into our Pullman car, one of the girls says, I can't sleep in an upper bunk. I have claustrophobia. Everybody was complaining like crazy. And I thought, we just got told you can't complain anymore. And then the double down, you had to sleep with 2 people together.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I'd never sleep with another person. I'd never have I just couldn't believe it. But we all managed to stay, and we had the dining car. Of course, the other girls could go to the dining car too, and use the bathroom.
From the boxcar bunks, yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't ever see that, except when I got to Miramar, I found out some of them were in a boxcar.
Wow. That must have been a hard 5
But the
days.
bad part is, when it even happens today, you have to go on the sidecar if a freight train comes by, because the freight is carrying different things. So we spent a lot of time on the sidecar, on the sidetrack or whatever.
Right.
And when we were in Texas, now, really, it wasn't very well known that women were in the Marines.
Yeah, I would think not.
And I don't know if you've ever heard they had a bad word.
No.
Because they said, well, the women in the Army are called the WACs, and the Navy is called the
Waves.
Waves,
Mhm.
and the Coast Guard is the Spars. They called us BAMs,
BAM?
broad-ass Marines, which was an insult.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's terrible.
we turned it around to beautiful American Marines. But you might be walking down the street and you hear somebody across the street call you that. Some of the girls would get absolutely violent. I thought, only a stupid person would talk like that. Didn't bother me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when we were in Texas, we were on a sidecar. Like I said, hardly anybody knew about it. And especially, who would ever heard of the vulgar name?
Yeah.
And it was in the night, and they were throwing rocks at our train and rocking it and calling us BAMs. Now, if we were a secret movement, why would these people that would be out at night would be doing that?
Yeah, how would they have known it was anything in the...
Never made
yeah.
any sense.
Right. Right.
I thought we were going to get
Must have been,
pushed over.
that must have been terrifying.
Well, everybody else was asleep when I wasn't. We heard all that. But then the next morning we moved on. And then when we were moved into LA and all the white buildings and palm trees.
Oh, totally different place for you.
Oh,
You'd finally got your world
I'm on the way to the
travel.
world. But then they put us on another train to Miramar,
Uh-huh.
and then started to rain. And we're in this, we stop in the middle of this area, and there was a lot of tumbleweeds blowing around. Not even a building, no ocean, no palm trees. We're out in the middle of
Nowhere.
I guess Miramar is in the desert.
Yeah, it's inland, definitely.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and then some trucks finally come, took us in to some barracks. One barrack was built and the others are under construction. But, and then in the morning, after such a beguiling night, we went to breakfast, and then we see we're all under restriction because we didn't check right away and knew our jobs right away. We were all assigned to do different things. So in my book, you'll see that I got a big restriction.
Oh.
But
everybody, you arrived in the middle of the night, or?
yeah, the next morning you're supposed to check the bulletin board and see what job you're supposed to do.
How were you to know any of that if they hadn't told you?
Well, every Marine knows it. The next morning you always check the bulletin board. I was sick, but you have to have a fever of a certain thing before you can be really sick.
Doctor's written.
So you give APC pill, whatever that is.
Sounds mysterious. So when you finally got to Miramar, what was your assignment? What job did you end up
Well,
doing?
then I was, more or less, we sort of, since the barracks were brand new, we had to do a little work around the barracks.
What kind of work did you have to do?
Fix our beds and fix it up so we could move furniture around so we could live there.
Okay.
And then I was to report to the post office.
Uh-huh.
And here was this guy behind the desk with all these stripes and ribbons and everything. And I never heard any language, and I knew it was all bad. And I thought, I can't go to work there. But I wasn't allowed not to go to work there.
You didn't really have a choice, did you?
I didn't know what I was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to work the next day, he was gone.
Hmm. Because weren't the women in the Marines, wasn't the saying that you freed a man to fight?
Freed a man to fight.
So all the jobs that you were taking on had previously been held by men. Okay. But yet you're living in a whole new barrack that they had built for the women?
Across the road.
Okay, but the barracks for the women, they built for the women. They hadn't
Yes.
existed before. Uh-huh.
Yes. Now at Camp Lejeune, we took over the men's barracks.
I see. Uh-huh. Because there weren't men there, obviously. They'd already moved out.
They'd moved the men out, but when we march into these buildings, we went into the head, they had a bunch of sheets over a bunch of stuff. And we didn't understand.
What was that? Yeah.
Well, I had never heard of a urinal in my life.
How would you?
Never.
Yeah.
But,
They covered them with sheets so that you wouldn't have to look at them?
yeah.
That's So did you peek? Did you lift the sheet and look? I mean, I'm
We
dying to
didn't have that
know.
much free time.
Boy, they really were regimented, weren't
Oh,
they?
we were.
Yeah.
You know, we got Christmas in the boot camp.
Oh, tell us about that. That must have been exciting.
I could hardly wait because I was so sick from getting all these shots at once instead of waiting
Uh-huh.
a day. And 5 o'clock up and 10 o'clock at night. And then you had to, I can remember making a paste out of Rinso and Clorox to make sure my barracks would be clean. Sitting on my bed and making that paste and cleaning it up absolutely perfectly clean. And then inspection in the morning, they'd say kittens under the bed.
What's that mean? Kitten?
That would be dust balls.
Oh.
I think the lieutenant, when she came in for inspection, pulled them out of her pocket and threw them down. Because we all scrubbed and everything,
The
except
floor.
that one girl down below.
Right, with all the trunks and the
All
record
the
player.
trunks and
Yeah,
record
she was the
player.
troublemaker.
No, she didn't do anything.
Right, right.
But, no, we'd still get
You get written up for kittens.
kittens under the bed.
Mm-hmm.
But they would even go up onto the rafters to see if there was dust. They just keep us busy.
Yeah.
And then we had to go to all these classes, and I had to go to PE, and
So what was your Christmas like?
then Christmas, I thought, at least I can sleep in. Well, they said it's going to be Christmas Eve, so we have to go to the hall and sing carols. And then they played us a movie. It was some kind of a black and white movie with Blackie, and it was supposed to be, the guy was called Blackie. And he would carefully move his fingers around the door, and here were so absolutely drunk from too many shots and not enough sleep.
Yeah.
And so we never get to bed. We was up all night singing Christmas carols.
Did you have Christmas Day off? Did they give you that day off?
No, we were Marines.
Yeah.
But now they don't celebrate Christmas at all.
Okay.
I don't think.
I don't think so. I can't imagine that they would nowadays. Or they'd
In
have.
fact, but we had a big Christmas lunch.
I saw that menu, yeah.
We even got cigars. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and root beer floats and everything.
Yeah, and here at home we couldn't even get a root beer.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, Christmas was pretty bad. We were all so tired. We all wanted to go to bed, but we had to sit up and sing Christmas carols and
Who were you singing the carols for?
ourselves.
Oh, so that you weren't even entertaining anybody.
No.
It was just.
But the Catholic girls, they got off to go to Mass for before Christmas, I forget. There's a holiday before. But they were always going off, they got time off, And they said, you know, at home I don't even go to church, but I'm going to sleep.
But they were going to go then because
Yeah, I was going to go sleep in the pew.
Yeah, right. Became very religious all of a sudden, didn't they?
They admitted it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
And but I was an Episcopalian, so I had to go to Protestant church, and I didn't feel like I was going to church at all. And they said I could go to town if I wanted to go, but that was a lot of work. I couldn't go in, at boot camp I couldn't go to town, but at Cherry Point I could.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, Christmas was a big bore. I mean, we had to work too hard.
Yeah, you would have probably, best present you could have gotten was being able to sleep all day.
Even another hour.
Yeah.
And then it was New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to Cherry Point.
What time of year did you get to Miramar?
January, Easter.
Easter, so spring, so about this time of year.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So the weather was nice.
Rainy.
Oh, okay, okay. But you were moving into nicer weather when you were at Miramar. You passed the winter, and so you're getting into summer
Yeah,
months.
but we were out in the prairie or whatever.
Yeah, hot, I bet.
No, it was windy and no buildings and no towns. And you could take a bus into San Diego
Mm-hmm.
for 25 cents.
Mm.
But there were 3 bases. It was Miramar, Kearney, and Elliott.
Miramar, okay.
They were all together out on that.
They were all Marine bases?
Kearney was Navy,
Okay.
but there were Marines on it.
Mhm.
There were Marines and Navy at Elliott. I don't know exactly. Some of the girls said that it was a special units were trained there, but some girls were there. I don't know what they did.
So did you work 5 days a week at the post office? Was it a regular job that you did?
Oh yes, mostly. Now, we were embarkation, debarkation. There were over 10,000 people at Miramar
Really? Wow.
at one time.
Uh-huh.
Not in the beginning, but eventually.
And how many of them roughly were women out of that 10,000? How many women Marines were there with you on that?
Well, there were 2 women barracks. Well, there were 3 the officers' barracks. I'm not counting, only 2 barracks.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 4 wings. I don't know if you know what a wing is.
This was shaped like the letter H, right?
The letter
Okay.
H.
Uh-huh.
And in each wing was 86 girls.
Wow.
So there were 4 wings in each
Mhm.
building. But we wouldn't always be 86 all the time because people would get transferred in and out.
Mm-hmm.
There might be 75 and then 86. So
Mhm.
it would be, people would come and go.
Mm-hmm.
And now some girls, unlike when you finished boot camp, you were reclassified.
Mm-hmm.
Some girls went to radio school.
Oh.
They gave you this hearing test, and if you do, I don't know how these girls ever passed it. Beep, high beep, low beep, beep. You had to take a score, and those that got a certain score could go to radio school. Some went to parachute fitting to put parachutes together. There were all kinds of different schools that you could go to had you been wanted. And then when you asked for a certain school, you got accepted or not accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Or the school won't open for 6 weeks, so the next class will get that class.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of pulling things out of a hat.
Right,
as
right.
to who got
You
what.
could ask for something, but you might not get it. Uh-huh.
That's right.
Right. And that's when you left Cherry Point and went to Miramar. That was at that point?
No, that was when I went to Cherry Point,
Oh, okay, okay, prior to Cherry Point.
prior to Cherry Point.
Mm-hmm.
we could go to different schools. And one time, now you had to have your towels at the end of your bed, and your names were on your towels, different things. And my towel kept getting stolen. And this one girl said, "I'm going to radio school, take my towel." And her towel said Rosemary. But that was all right, it was there for show anyway. You put your towel you used were in your locker.
Oh, those weren't towels you used, they were just towels with your name on it to show where you were?
Inspection, that's a Cherry Point.
Uh-huh.
No, wait a minute. Oh, I left Cherry Point, and then when I got to Miramar, I used Rosemary's towel.
Oh, okay, okay.
And one time we woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, stand at attention at the foot of your bed. At attention. And what was going on? And these officers came in and they went through everybody's locker and their, we had this chest. And they were one by one. Then finally they said we could go at ease so we could relax a little. And then when she went to our bed, then we got to stand at attention. And we couldn't talk. And we were all at the foot of our beds, standing at attention and going, well, come to find out, there was a thief. Someone had been stealing people's, and girls lost their wedding rings and all kinds of things and their money. And but across from me was this giddy little blonde, just as happy as everyone else. And she's the thief. They found all these things. And she had a car. And every other weekend she had off, she went to the pawn shop and sold it.
Oh my.
And it took them a while. And then when they caught her, they had to clean out the broom closet to make a prison for her because they couldn't put her in the men's jail.
Oh. So they kept her in the broom closet until
Kept her in the broom closet until she went to trial, and then they pulled her out of the Marines.
Oh, wow.
But that was quite an experience to stand at attention at the foot of your bed at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess they figured that they had to do it then so that they could catch everybody off guard and...
Yeah, no one knew, and no one had a chance to hide anything.
Right, right. So they could really find the culprit.
I don't, well, they found her.
Yeah.
But here she was just as happy as could be. I mean, she seemed, I always thought of, a crook by their shifty eyes.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. You always thought you could pick them out in a crowd, right?
Well, that's what I always thought.
Uh-huh.
But she was as relaxed as anybody else.
She was a professional.
She might have been.
Yeah, sounds like it to me. Wow.
But
did you get paid to work in the post office, or was it?
Well, yeah, I got $20 every 2 weeks.
$20 every 2 weeks.
It was $50, but then they took out for war bonds and they took out for insurance.
So it was supposed to be $50 every 2 weeks, but you ended
$50 a month.
A month. Okay, okay. So when you worked at the post office, were you actually
At the post office was a directory service.
Okay.
All the mail
Okay, yeah.
that went to the South Seas had to go, it went over to there. But if they'd been transferred or the unit had been moved for another island, it had to be redirected. It would come back to Miramar, it had to be directed.
Resorted out and put into the correct channel to get to the new location.
Readdressed.
Mm-hmm.
And there were about 6 of us in there. But when we left, well, how much there were? There were about 100 of us. Because there were so many people in the South Pacific.
As the war escalated.
As the war escalated in the South Pacific.
There were more people needed to do that. So you weren't doing mail for anybody on your actual base. Did you hand out mail to the...
Well, later on had hand out the mail to people stationed on the base.
Okay, so they would come
I
to
had a
the,
window.
right, because I was reading about that in your book, and so it sounded like you had a mail window and
I
you
had a
were,
mail window.
the men Marines would come in and get their mail
Get
from
their
you.
mail. And the kids in the brig would come, their officers, their, whoever was in charge of them came and got the mail.
For the people in the brig.
But I think that was wrong. Most of the kids in the brig were going to go overseas and they wanted to go home one more time. So they went home one more time. Then they had to go to the brig.
They got hauled into the brig because they'd gone home without
Leave.
authorization.
Without authorization.
Yeah, that seems
And they
rather
treated
cold.
them terrible.
Uh,
Like, I was going with one fellow who was a cook, and the men from the brig came in to eat, and they would come in double time, and they could, whatever they could grab, they could eat. And that was wrong.
yeah.
And if they said anything, then they got restricted. They got their meals thrown to them in the brig. I don't know.
Seems
Now, some of the kids in the brig came in and cleaned the offices. And some of the girls smoked. And the girls said, these guys come in, they steal our cigarettes. And the gal says, I'm buying extra cigarettes. And then when they got out, they came by and brought back the cigarettes to the girls that stole their cigarettes, and then they brought them back to them after they got out. So they weren't bad people.
No.
They went home to see mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, there was that girl that stole jewelry and money, so maybe some of them did steal.
Right. But the majority of them were just guys trying to get one last visit home before
One
they went
last visit home before
overseas.
they went overseas.
They may not come back. That's the
They might
reality.
never come back.
Right.
That's right.
Right. Wow.
But when they came back from overseas, you'd see them sitting on the ground. They'd been to the PX. They'd have a gallon of ice cream on their lap and a quart of milk here, a quart of milk there. Evidently, there's no milk overseas.
Or ice cream, yeah.
Or ice cream.
Yeah.
And then they made a law that the PX could not serve candy or any food an hour before chow time.
Because they didn't want people, what, ruining their appetite or what?
Right,
were
they didn't want them, they would eat ice cream all the time and they wouldn't eat any meat.
Wow. Were there a lot of, did you see a lot
There
of,
were 10 mess halls for the men, and then we had our one mess hall. And every 10 mess hall had to be exactly the same, so no one could say number 3 is better than number 7. And so when they got in some meat or some food and it wasn't enough for 10 mess halls, we got it.
the women's barracks got
The
it?
women's got it.
Uh-huh.
So we had the best food on the base.
Were there very many men that came back to Miramar from being overseas?
Oh yes, they came back and went
And
over.
went back out again?
Well, that one corporal did, because he married a Marine officer.
Oh, he did. What was the feeling of the men Marines to the women Marines? Did they like having you there, or what was their sentiment about that?
Well, the old time, some of them, like the one man fellow says, it's just like high school.
Mm.
There's going to be all kinds
Mm-hmm.
and different. No, the captain in charge of our barracks, we didn't have a captain in charge in the beginning in that post office, but eventually, as the post office grew and the base grew, we had a captain in charge and he was pretty good, but the woman officer was nuts. And as she said, my father was some kind of an officer, and my grandfather was in the English military, and my great-grandfather served in India for the English, and I'm going to be a Marine. Well, her Marine Corps was different than our Marine Corps. And her fellow officers didn't like her either.
Oh,
So it wasn't just us.
yeah, that tells you quite a bit
Yeah.
about somebody.
I found out later they didn't like her, didn't like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, how did you meet your husband, Don? He was in the Army, wasn't he?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the Army, whenever the military threw a party, be it a picnic or they had to invite all the USOs and all the surrounding military. And one of the girls said, the Army's having a dance and a barbecue and horseback riding at Torrey Pines. And the Marines hate the Army. So why don't we go and make the guys mad? So she got up a bunch of gals to go, and I didn't want to go with it. My bunkies were going to go, so I went. And my bunkie met her dream boat. He could dance like nobody else. He's wonderful. She was on cloud 9. I had met this guy, but I didn't think much of it. I mean, why do I want to meet somebody in the Army when we've got 10,000 men over here? If I wanted to meet some guy, I could go meet my own. I had gone with some guys, but these fellows, they wanted to go to town with a woman Marine.
The Army men or the Marine?
No, the Marines.
Uh-huh, okay.
The Army was scared to go to San Diego.
Right.
Because it was a Navy town,
Oh, okay.
a Marine town. But some of the guys all wanted to get married before they went overseas. Who wanted to marry one alone? I mean, it didn't make any sense to me. I thought they'd want to know who you were first.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd like to go out on a date, but couldn't you just have a date?
It'd have to be more, yeah, couldn't you just go to a movie or go to a,
Yeah.
go out and have fun?
Go out and
Companionship.
you just have a good time.
Right, right.
But anyway, I had made a rule. I didn't go out with a guy more than 3 times. That was it. No more. Because I didn't want to think I was serious. But anyway, my bunkie was in love with Roland. Oh. And she said, if a guy calls you, please go out with him because he's the best friend for Roland and I'll get asked out.
Oh.
So they were going to go to a picnic on La Jolla. And I went. So she could have Roland. And I fell in love with this guy. I'd met him at the dance, but I didn't think too much of him.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it.
Was he already smitten with you?
I never asked. He probably was because he asked me to marry him on that first date.
Oh, really? I saw that picture. You're standing in the surf at the beach,
Right.
and you said, "This is the day I said yes."
But see, now,
Beautiful photograph.
if you wonder whether we had to wear our uniforms to go to the beach.
Oh, really?
And when we got to the beach, we could trade to our
Your regular clothes.
our slacks and everything. And then we had to put on our uniform to go back
Now, where did you manage to do that?
on the beach. We held up our trench
I was
coats.
going to say, you had to stand behind something. You certainly weren't changing your clothes right
We
now.
held up our trench coats and each one took our turn to change our clothes.
So Don asked you right then and there, how many times had you known him or been out with him? Just less than 3 or more than 3?
That was our date.
That was the one and only?
Yes.
Well, you really broke your own rule, didn't you?
Well, I didn't say yes right away.
But
I
you,
was sure smitten.
That's
I'd
great.
never been smitten before.
And you had no plans of joining the Marines and getting married? You
No, I had
this
to
thing
see
from your
I was
mind.
going to sign up after the Marines. I was going to sign up on a cruise ship,
Oh, so you could see the world.
see the world.
Uh-huh.
Because when you got married, you settled down.
Uh-huh. Wow. So how long were you, from when you first, met him and became engaged, how'd you guys get to see each other? I mean,
He was stationed at La Jolla at Camp Callan
okay.
to be trained for the amphibious landing on Japan.
Oh,
The
really?
Marines were training them for amphibious landing, but they would not let the Army sleep on the Marine Corps base. So every day they shipped him 50 miles up to Camp Pendleton to learn how to do amphibious training,
Mm-hmm.
and then shipped him back to Camp Callan to go to sleep.
Wow.
And then they took him out to the Santa Rosa Islands. Not near Santa Rosa up here, it's Santa Rosa down there. The islands are called Santa Rosa Islands. Near. And they could sleep on the same boat with the Army.
The Marines and the Army could sleep on the same boat, but not on land at the same base.
That doesn't make sense to me. And where'd they get the gas to ship them 50 miles up,
Yeah,
50
during the
miles
war,
back?
right, right.
And then we met in September, and in February they were going to ship him out. They took his clothes away from him and gave him winter clothes, and he went to Germany.
Wow. You went to Germany in February?
Yeah. He didn't get into action till April. He was in action 2 weeks and was machine gunned.
Wow.
That's why we're still in this house.
Mm. Because he was what injuries did he?
He got 5 machine gun bullets
Oh my gosh, where?
in his rear end, through his canteen and through his legs.
Oh my gosh.
And so they told him at 40 he would be in a wheelchair. And so when we ever looked for another house, we could ramp,
Right, right.
because there's only 2 steps.
Mm-hmm.
And never got the wheelchair. Of course he didn't tell me that he was supposed to rest. He loved to play ball.
Baseball?
Baseball, hardball, softball. He played basketball, he played volleyball.
If it had a ball, he was there.
He loved to compete.
Very competitive, huh?
And they called him in for a review after 10 years. And they said, well, you're walking. Those that took our advice are in their wheelchair.
Huh.
And we know now, use it or lose it.
Right, right. So when you got married, it was September 29th, 1943, right?
We got married in 45.
45, I'm sorry. And I know that there was quite a story about
Oh, when we went
to get the license.
we were going to I put in for my furlough to get married in September. And in August, I got a notice that my father had dropped dead.
Mm.
And the Red Cross asked me to put in for my leave to go home to the funeral. And they told me, you must decide whether you're going to go to your father's funeral or get married in September.
Who told you that?
The NCO, the
Your
first
commanding
sergeant,
officer.
first sergeant in
Okay.
Women Marines. So I went back to the Red Cross, and I wasn't sure my father had died. That's a denial, because they mixed up my name before.
Oh, right, sure.
So-
Ended up 10 weeks in Cherry Point. Could have been, right.
Could have been wrong too.
Uh-huh.
And I just got a letter from my dad. I knew he was alive. And so when I told the Red Cross, I said, that's not true. In the military, you're allowed 30 days leave. But this is a wartime, so we only let them have 2 weeks. But you have a family emergency, you're allowed both. So I went back and told her. They didn't like that too well, but they gave me my leave.
And you went back to your father's funeral?
I went back to my father's funeral.
That was the first time you'd been home?
No, I'd been home on furlough.
Oh, you had gone home, okay.
And I didn't go take time to find my ex-landlady and tell her that she was wrong. Anyway, when I went to get, now, we worked 5 days, but Saturdays, every other Saturday, you had to work till noon. And my Captain Dupree in charge of the post office gave me that day off because the next week I was going to get married. I'd be on that Saturday. So I had to get my license. And Don was at Campo, which was Mitchell Convalescent Hospital near the Mexican border, because that was the closest Army base to San Diego. He could go anywhere he wanted.
Okay.
And we had to get our license, and the city hall closed at noon, so we had to do it in the morning. So I had to get a release from my women release, and Mary Jane would give it to me. She said, no, you don't have permission to get married. Well, I knew about it all that time and didn't know I needed special permission. Said, you can't have your time off. So I told Captain Dupree I can't get my time off because they won't release me. He said, come in your greens, which would be I wore in dungarees at work at the post office. So I wore my greens to work. And the truck came in for the mail, and he says, all right, hop in the back of the truck. And then they stacked the mail truck.
With all the bags of mail?
All the bags of mail. And off we went. We get to downtown where the city hall is, and Don's standing on the street corner, and the Marine Corps truck stops, and the guys are in the back with their M1s guarding the mail. There's a shotgun wedding. And I crawled out over the sleeves, and we got our license. I had no trouble coming back to the base, but I had my license. And I asked the girls that got married, I said, how'd you do it? They said, we said we had official business, and they didn't dare question us.
Okay. You were just being honest and getting
Well, I
penalized.
did have official business.
Yes, that's true. Right.
But I didn't know that they were that way.
So did you go, so you get back to the base, and then how long between when you got your
1
marriage?
week, the next week I got married, Mary Jane came to my wedding.
She never asked you how you got your license?
Nope.
She probably knew better than that. She figured you obviously had a way around. So where did you get married?
We got married on the base.
At Miramar?
At Miramar. And before that, it was the end, getting near the end of the war, and this new recruit came in to take my job. And he said, you know, your marriage isn't legal unless you go to Catalina. I'm from Catalina. And so we got to stay at his grandmother had some cabins, and that's where we spent our honeymoon.
Isn't that nice?
And you know, merchant marines were being trained on Catalina, and you couldn't go, so his mother was our aunt.
Oh.
And she could get her niece and
Nephew off over there. So did you take a ferry? Did they have a ferry to Catalina?
Ferry to Catalina. What was it? Boat, more than a ferry. But my husband got pretty upset because we were in a restaurant, and these merchant marine kids were saying, "You going stateside?" When you going stateside? He said, "They're going stateside. They're in the city limits of Los Angeles." He's been overseas.
He'd already been overseas and back. So he'd gotten injured before you
Got married.
got married. Okay.
Yeah, we got married a year later.
Mm-hmm.
We got engaged the first date, but
Okay, so you had a year-long engagement.
yeah, but he was mostly by mail.
Right, of course, because he was overseas. I'm sure you kept those letters, and you have all those letters.
You want them?
No, I just think it's fabulous. I mean, you've got such great documentation of everything. So how long? How long were you married before the war ended and before you were discharged? How did all that?
A couple of weeks.
Oh, okay. So it's pretty.
The war was, we could spend most of our honeymoon listening to the radio, see what was being signed up, who was being let go, and there was a big confusion on that as to whether they're going to keep them. And the Marine Corps got rid of the women in 1946. They didn't need
no
women.
longer served a purpose.
And they found out they couldn't do without them.
Oh, really?
They called them back in.
So they're still an active part of the.
Now they are Marines.
Okay.
And we have the Women Marines Association, and a lot of them won't join. We don't have very good membership because just the wartime Marines.
The World War II Marine women were the ones.
Yeah, and some of the younger ones are in, but not many.
Well, they'd be wise to join up to learn from the history of the World War II vets that are in there.
We're Marines. And the World War II Marines were, what were we? Women reserves.
Right.
We called WRs, women reserves. One thing good about being in the Marines, I have trouble with directions. And I was going to meet my girlfriends in Los Angeles. They were at a certain place. And they made the wrong turn. And there were guys sleeping in the gutter and kind of a bad place to be. And a Marine came up to me and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm supposed to meet at Pershing Square or something like that." I don't know what it was. He says, "You're wrong, you're my sister. Stay with me, I'll get you out of here."
So he escorted you to the correct part of town.
Got me out of that wino.
Skid Row area, yeah.
So that was kind of neat.
Do you want to ask her about after the war? So, okay, how did you guys decide to move? Did Don live in Martinez?
Don was from Martinez.
Okay.
He moved here when he was 18 months old.
Oh, okay, because I know you said he was born in Fort Jones up north. So you naturally came back to where his family was, right?
For 1 year.
Oh, you were only going to be here for a year?
That's
What was the plan after that? What did you wait?
Well, his mother was quite different. Every time when we said we were going to move, she was going to kill herself.
Oh, I see. How were you welcomed into the family? I mean, here you were, you came back a new bride.
They said I didn't even have an accent from Ohio. They thought I was from another country.
Yeah.
He wasn't like his family.
Okay. He was a different, well, it sounds like both of you were quite individual personalities, so it's a good thing you found each other.
I would explain off record.
Okay, that's fine. We'll take that another time. So you had one son fairly soon after you got here, right?
Yeah.
Your oldest son, William, right?
Yeah, we had him in 46 or 7, I forget.
Okay. And were you
47.
Were you involved? You didn't work outside the home?
Oh, I did work at I took a temporary job several times. But I had a lot of illnesses. And the first one was born in 47. And the next one was born in 60.
Okay.
The others weren't born. I would lose them at the 4th or 5th month.
That must have been really hard. Tough.
It was,
Mhm.
but they said you had one, why don't you have the rest?
Mhm.
That was something else.
Mhm.
And then we had one in 62 and then one in 65.
Mhm. So you had 4 boys. Boy, that's keep you busy.
But that's the 20 years between the first and the last.
Yeah, that's right. Kind of almost like 2 sets of kids entirely.
But one thing was not funny. My husband died with pancreatic cancer unexpectedly. When he first went to the doctor, the doctor said, "I wish I was half as healthy as you are."
Hmm.
But the youngest was 12,
When his dad passed away. Mhm.
and it was the next day. The 12-year-old said, "You know, Dad's dead. And he's not coming back. Aren't you going to divide things up?"
Wow.
I thought, a house, a car, and I'm going to give this little snot that. I mean, and we changed the subject. The next day was the same thing, and said, "Aren't you going to divide things up?" And we changed the subject, and about the 3rd day he said it again. I thought his brothers were going to kill him.
Hmm.
And I said, "What do you want to divide?" Well, my husband couldn't eat, and he loved candy.
Mm.
And in the nightstand was
Oh, he just wanted the candy.
and he ran to the bedroom and he got this bunch of candy bars in the nightstand. My husband had put them in the candy bars so he'd eat it later. I wasn't on that one.
Yeah.
And he said, "This is what I want."
So you gave it to him, right?
No.
No?
We divided it.
Oh, okay. So that's good.
We divided it.
That's great. Oh,
But
that's,
here I thought, but that's what you don't think about with the kids, what they're thinking.
yes, exactly.
You
Yeah.
don't.
You think they're on the same level of grief and everything as you are, but yet they're really worried about more their own important things.
The important thing.
Right, to them.
The
Yeah.
candy bars that they
Yeah.
did. And
You have a beautiful necklace on. Can you tell, what is the...
this is what we use in the Women Marines. It has the Marine Corsignia.
Uh-huh.
I put it on.
Is that part of the group that you're part of now? You each have those, or did you?
No, if you want one, you bought it.
I see, okay. And you've had that since you were in the war?
No,
Okay.
when it was available,
I see.
I got it.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. It's a proud piece of jewelry to have.
When we have our meetings, I wear it.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. So what are some of the, have you been involved with, I know you're involved with the Women's Marines group. And do you do things, or you just get together and have meetings, or what's that
We
involved?
used to have meetings. Now, my friends down in Orange County, they helped at the Veterans Hospital, and they did a lot of things. Our group up here, we had 2 women that said, "If you want to do anything, join the Red Cross. We're a social one."
Uh-huh.
Well, now that they have passed away,
Mhm.
I'm too old to go and help.
Yeah.
But I do help at the museum, and I help at Loaves and Fishes,
Oh, good.
and
Yeah, you've done a lot of volunteering in Martinez, I think.
yeah, different things.
Uh-huh.
But you do what you can.
You said earlier that there was, that you thought that people nowadays should understand what that message was about sacrificing and, you know, making an effort. And how would that pertain to today's...
Today, well, during the war, you didn't throw anything out,
Mhm.
and you fixed it. You didn't buy new, because there wasn't new. And with your garbage, you separated it. Your glassware, of course they didn't have plastic, but your trimmings went back to the land and things. And that's what we should be doing now.
Mhm.
We shouldn't throw everything in the garbage. And all my kids are, buy new. That's, get rid of it.
Mhm.
To the dumpster. And I think that's wrong. I turn on house and garden, and they take the sledgehammer to the kitchen, and I think those cupboards would be nice cupboards in somebody's house.
Yeah, because you've lived during a time period where there wasn't anything extra. And
Well, no, it
everything
just
had-
doesn't
everything
make
had-
sense like that.
Right, everything
I
had
mean, the
values.
trees are going and everything's. Now they say when your house is on fire, get out of it quick because it's got all this
Plastic. And
plastic that's gonna,
True.
when it's heated, it's
Toxic.
least toxic.
Yeah.
I think we should have more wood.
Do you have anything that you'd like to leave the message with, or?
I learned more in the Marine Corps than I did at any other time. And you meet people from other stations, other lives and things, and it was a good experience, a very good experience.
Good.
Helps you grow up.
Helps you appreciate what you have and your country.
Well, you also learn there's a lot of nuts in the world.
But that's kind of fun, huh?
That's right.
Very good.
But I'm good friends with all my bunkies, except one.
All your bunkies, are they all still alive?
No,
Most
they've
of them?
passed away now.
Okay.
And,
But you have one in Atlanta, you said, right?
well, she's the one I met in Cherry Point.
Oh, okay. Okay.
She's in Augusta, but another one from Miramar's in Minneapolis, and she's still alive.
And you have send letters back and forth or talk on the phone?
We don't talk as much as we used to.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have another convention coming up in Philadelphia in September, but I'm not gonna go.
Too far? Too much?
My friends aren't there.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
No, Alice, that's with our group, she's going to go, but then she has a son living nearby. So and I think the gal in Augusta's going to make it to Philadelphia. But and she's a good friend. But I mean, it's just not worth it to go. And the last time I went, there were so many of those scooters.
Oh,
God.
you didn't want to be caught with them, huh? Yeah, you're definitely not scooter material.
Well, they're dang, you can't afford it. Forget it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went for the friendship, not for the organization, and they're not there,
Yeah.
so I won't go to that.
Okay. Well, thank you so
But
much.
we have a luncheon coming up, if
That's
you want to meet more different gals, there's a gal here, Martinez, Fitchett, Marion Fitchett, and she was working in San Francisco for the Marine Corps, and they couldn't get clearances. She had to be military, so she joined the Marine Corps to keep her job down in San Francisco. But she didn't live in the barracks. She got an allowance to live in town.
Oh, okay, okay.
And worked in the Marines.
So she's a local person who'll be
Yeah,
at your
I was
local group.
thinking of having her come here, but I didn't know whether it would be all right or
Well,
not.
we'll definitely get some more information from you for other people to interview.
Right.
It'd be really great.
Well,
you have-
Marion lives right behind. She lives on Rapp Avenue.
Oh, okay. I know where that is. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
She's a great gal.
Well, good. Well, there's a recommendation. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It was just fascinating.
Well,
And I'm so glad we got it down on tape for your family and for you
I
and
hope
for
you
the.
can edit it.
He's good at
Well, I don't know about that.